President Zelensky, you say in a post on X today, Russia must end this war, which it itself started. President Trump, you say President Zelensky of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to. Which is it?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think we're going to have a meeting. I think if everything works out well today, we'll have a trilat. And I think there will be a reasonable chance of ending the war when we do that.
And is this the end of the road for American support for Ukraine? Is today's meeting deal or no deal?
I can never say that. It's never the end of the road. People are being killed, and we want to stop that. So I would not say it's the end of the road. No, I think we have a good chance of doing it. It's been almost 4 years now that a lot of people were killed last week. A lot of people last week. I mean, millions of people killed, but a lot of people last week for whatever reason. A big number, a lot of soldiers, on both sides. And I know the president, I know myself, and I believe Vladimir Putin wants to see it ended.
And as you met with Putin on Friday, today you've got President Zelensky here. As you listen to Russia and Ukraine, which side has the better cards?
Well, I don't want to say that. I'm just here to be. Look, this isn't my war. This is Joe Biden's war. He's the one that had a lot to do with this happening, and we want to get it ended. And we want it to end good for everybody. We want it to end good. The people of Ukraine have suffered incredibly.
And to that point, President Zelensky, are you prepared to keep sending Ukrainian troops to their deaths for another couple years, or are you going to agree to redraw the maps?
Thank you for your question. So, first of all, we live under each day attacks. That today have been a lot of attacks and a lot of wounded people, and the child was dead, small one year and a half. So we need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support American and European partners. And we will do our best for this. So, and I think we show that we are strong people, and we supported the idea of the United States, personally of President Trump, to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war. And we are ready for trilateral, as President said. This is a good signal about trilateral. I think this is very good. Thank you.
Here they are. They're going to assemble so that they can take the highly anticipated class photo to commemorate this morning's series of meetings. Let's listen in for a moment, see if anybody says anything.
That was not a great day. See the picture. Is everything okay? You all set? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, so the president not entertaining any questions in the cross hall there for the group photo. It's amazing. That's typically the type of photo that you would see at a G8 conference, a G7 conference, a G20, maybe an APEC conference, a NATO conference. Not that many people, not that many powerful world leaders, all in the White House at the same time. That really is extraordinary.
It speaks to the unusual nature of all of this morning's meetings, as you pointed out at the top of the show.
Right.
Well, thank you very much. It's a great honor to have you here. Special place. White House is special no matter where you're from. Represents so much, and it really is beautiful. And thank you for all of the wonderful things that took place today. We've had a very successful day thus far. Important discussions as we work to end the killing and stop the war in Ukraine. We're all working for the same goal, very simple goal. We want to stop the killing, get this settled. I've just had the honor of being with President Zelensky and all of the discussions that we've had. We covered a lot of territory. And I spoke indirectly with President Putin today. We're going to call President Putin right after this meeting. I'm sure we're going to have a solid meeting, good meeting, maybe a great meeting, and we're going to try and work out a trilat after that and see if we can get it finished, put this to sleep, because this is not since the Second World War has there been anything like this. So I'm honored to welcome NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who's a great gentleman, great political leader in Europe generally, but now he's the NATO Secretary General, and you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much, Mark. Prime Minister Starmer of the United Kingdom, our friend and my friend, and doing really well. And people like him a lot. We all like him. Everyone knows President Macron of France, who's been with me from the beginning, one of the first people I met as a foreign dignitary, and I liked him from day one. And I like him even more now. That's pretty good. That's unusual. That's a pretty unusual thing. Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, who's a really a great leader and an inspiration over there. She's served now, even though she's a very young person, she's served there for a long period of time relative to others. They don't last very long. You've lasted a long time. You're going to be there a long time. Chancellor Merz of Germany, who is a very strong person and a very strong leader and very highly respected in Germany. And he's my friend, and it's an honor to have him as my friend. Thank you very much. Very good. You look great with your tan. Where did you get that tan? I want to get a tan like that.
That's true.
President Stubb of Finland, and he's somebody that, where are we here? Where? I'm right here. Oh. You look better than I've ever seen you look. But you've done a great job, and we wanted to have you here because you're somebody that we all respect. And you've had a lot to do with the success, I think, and the potential success. And thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. And the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who is somebody that we just made a big deal with all of those countries. I don't know. I think you might be more powerful than all these guys at this table. I don't know. But we had a great negotiation, and you're respected all over the world. So I want to thank you very much for being here. It's a great honor to have you. The Alaska Summit reinforced my belief that while difficult, peace is within reach, and I believe that in a very significant step, President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine, and this is one of the key points that we need to consider, and we're going to be considering that at the table also, like who will do what, essentially. I'm optimistic that collectively we can reach an agreement that would deter any future aggression against Ukraine, and I actually think there won't be. I think that's even overrated, largely overrated, but we're going to find out, and I think that the European nations are going to take a lot of the burden. We're going to help them, and we're going to make it very secure. We also need to discuss the possible exchanges of territory, taking into consideration the current line of contact. That means the war zone, the war lines that are pretty obvious, very sad, actually, to look at them. And negotiating positions. President Putin, also, you have President of Ukraine, who is, you just met a little while ago, and we're going to try and get a three-party meeting, maybe as soon as we can. And I have a feeling you and President Putin are going to work something out. Ultimately, this is a decision that can only be made by President Zelensky and by the people of Ukraine working also together in agreement with President Putin. And I just think that's very good things are going to come of it. So I hope we have a good meeting. And if we can have a good meeting, I'll set up a meeting with President Putin. And if you'd like, I'll go to that meeting. And not that I want to do that, but I will do that because we want to save a lot of people from dying. A lot of people are dying, and we got to save them. We got to save it. 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 people sometimes a week. All of us would obviously prefer an immediate ceasefire while we work on a lasting peace, and maybe something like that could happen. As of this moment, it's not happening, but President Zelensky and President Putin can talk a little bit more about that. You know, in the 6 or so wars that we stopped, we haven't had a ceasefire. And so I don't know that it's necessary. You can do it through the war. But it would be, I like the ceasefire from another standpoint. You immediately stop the killing. But I believe a peace agreement at the end of all of this is something that's very attainable, and it can be done in the near future. With all of the wars that I got involved in, we only have this one left. Of course, as I walk out the door, there'll probably be a new one starting, and I'll get that stopped too. But I thought this was going to be one of the easier ones. It's actually one of the most difficult. They're very complex. The next step would be for a trilateral meeting, and that will be worked out. And I just look forward to working and having a great result. We're going to spend a lot of time today talking about, and we're really honored you guys came over. I mean, these are the heads of major countries and respected all over Europe. And they speak for, largely, I think I should say, but pretty much for the other countries of Europe. And we will come to a resolution today, I think, on almost everything, including probably the security. And that's pretty much a story. I'd like to say, Mr. President, would you like to say something? You have the media. If you want, you could come over and you could stand, or you could use mine, or you could just turn around, whichever you feel comfortable with.
Thank you so much. I can speak without microphone. Thank you so much. I think that we had very good conversation with President Trump.
Very good.
And it really was the best one. Or sorry, maybe the best one will be in the future. But it was really good. And we spoke about very sensitive points. The first one is security guarantees. And we are very happy with President that all the leaders are here, and the security in Ukraine depends on the United States and on you and on those leaders who are with us in our hearts. They have been online before yesterday, and etc. So a lot of countries on the side of Ukraine, our people, and all of us want to finish this war, stop Russia and stop this war. We spoke about it, and we will speak more about security guarantees. This is very important that the United States gives such strong signal and is ready for security guarantees. The second point, or maybe the first, humanitarian direction, very important to exchange all the prisoners, and I think that President will help. And I was very thankful to your wife again, Mr. President, for the letter about our abducted children, and I hope that really it can be a historic role for the people to bring kids back to the families and be happy at
Get
the
the people
families.
back, yeah.
Yes, this is so important, and I'm happy that we discussed it, this track with the President Trump, and I hope that we will find decisions. And then what is very important, that all the sensitive things, territorial, etc., we will discuss on the level of leaders during trilateral meeting, and President Trump will try to organize such meeting, and he said that he will come or not come. Ukraine will be happy if you will
both want me there, I will be there. Yeah,
yeah,
you know that.
thank you. And I think this is very important. Yes, so security guarantees, bringing kids back, and all our people, not only warriors, first of all warriors, and all the civilians, journalists, a lot of people in prison. So we need them back. And guarantees which will work for the years. We spoke about it, and I showed the President a lot of details on the battlefield, on the map. Thank you so much. Thank you for the map, by the way.
Good map.
It was great. Yeah. I'm thinking how to take it back.
We'll get you.
No. I think that we had constructive, specific meeting, and I'm very thankful to all the leaders who are here, and you help a lot, and so we are happy that we have such big unity today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much,
for hosting us.
Mr. President. I think you'll see that President Putin really would like to do something else. I think when we set that up, when we do, I think it's going to be when, not if. I think you're going to see some really positive moves. I know there's over 1,000 prisoners, and I know they're going to release them. Maybe they're going to release them very soon, like immediately, which I think is great. But we're going to set that up today after this meeting. So very good and great remarks. I appreciate it. Mark, as head of NATO, maybe you could say a few words, please.
Yes, I will be very brief. I really want to thank you, President of the United States, dear Donald, for the fact that you, as I said before, broke the deadlock with President Putin by starting that dialogue. And I think it was in February that you had the first phone call. And from there, we are now where we are today. And that is, I think, if we play this well, we could end this. And we have to end this. We have to stop the killing. We have to stop the destruction of Ukraine's infrastructure. It is a terrible war. So I'm really excited. And let's make the best out of today and make sure that from today onwards, we get this thing to an end as soon as possible. I really want to thank you for your leadership, what you are doing for Volodymyr, but of course also all the European colleagues. It is really crucial. And the fact that you have said, I'm willing to participate in the security guarantees is a big step. It's really a breakthrough, and it makes all the difference. So also thank you for that.
Well, NATO also has agreed from 2% to 5%, which is something that is a massive amount of money. And it's 2% that wasn't always paid to 5% that is paid. That's a big difference. And so we appreciate that. That was a great move. Thank you very much. Ursula, maybe on behalf of the Commission, you could say a couple of words.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's a very important moment. Indeed, we are here, Europeans, as friends and allies. We had a fantastic NATO summit. Together as the two largest and biggest economies in the world, we had the largest trade deal ever agreed. And now we are here to work together with you on a just and lasting peace for Ukraine. Stop the killing. This is really our common interest, stop the killing. And indeed, it's very good to hear that we're working on the security guarantees, Article 5 lies security guarantees, so important. But I want to thank you also that you mentioned the thousands of Ukrainian children that have been abducted. And as a mother and grandmother, every single child has to go back to its family. This should be one of our main priorities also in these negotiations, to make sure that the children come back to Ukraine, to their families.
Thank you. And we did. I was just thinking we're here for a different reason, but we just a couple of weeks ago made the largest trade deal in history. So that's a big thing, and congratulations. That's great. Thank you very much, Ursula. Mr. Chancellor from Germany, a very great leader.
Mr. President,
Please.
dear Donald, many thanks for having us today. I think this is extremely helpful that we are meeting and hearing that the two of you are having such a good meeting today here in Washington. The next steps ahead are the more complicated ones now. The path is open. You opened it last Friday. But now the way is open for complicated negotiations. And to be honest, we all would like to see a ceasefire, the latest from the next meeting on. I can't imagine that the next meeting would take place without a ceasefire. So let's work on that, and let's try to put pressure on Russia, because the credibility of these efforts we are undertaking today are depending on at least a ceasefire from the beginning of the serious negotiations from next step on. So I would like to emphasize this aspect and would like to see a ceasefire from the next meeting, which should be a trilateral meeting wherever it takes place.
Well, we're going to let the president go over and talk to the president, and we'll see how that works out, and if we can do that. I will say, and again I say it, in the 6 wars that I've settled, I haven't had a ceasefire. We just got into negotiations, and one of the wars was, as you know, in the Congo was 31 years long. Another one that we settled last week with 2 great countries was 35 years going on, and we had no ceasefire. So if we can do the ceasefire, great. And if we don't do a ceasefire, because many other points were given to us, many points were given to us, great points. Please, Georgia, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, Donald, Mr. President, for hosting us today in this important meeting. And I think it is an important day, a new phase, after 3 years and a half that we didn't see any kind of sign from the Russian side that there was a willing for dialogue. So something is changing, something has changed, thanks to you. Thanks also to the stalling in the battlefield. which was achieved with the bravery of Ukrainians and with the unity that we all provided to Ukraine. And the reason why I mention it is that we also have to remind that if we want to reach peace and if we want to guarantee justice, we have to do it united. So that's why it's a very good day, the one we are in. You can obviously count on Italy as it was from the beginning. We are on the side of Ukraine, and we do absolutely support your efforts towards peace. We will talk about many important topics. The first one is security guarantees, how to be sure that it won't happen again, which is the precondition of every kind of peace. I'm happy that we will discuss about that. I'm happy that we will begin from a proposal, which is the, let's say, Article 5 model, which was Italian at the beginning. So we are always ready to bring our proposals for peace, for dialogue. It's something we have to build together to guarantee peace and to defend the security of our nation. So thank you, Mr. President, for hosting us.
Thank you very much. Emmanuel?
Thank you, Mr. President, for organizing this meeting and for your commitment. And everything was said, but I just have to say here, everybody around this table is in favor of peace. And we work very hard, and we've worked very hard during the past few years to have a peace which is a robust and long-standing peace. This is why the idea of a trilateral meeting is very important, because this is the only way to fix it. And by the way, I think as a follow-up, we would need probably a quadrilateral meeting, because when we speak about security guarantees, we speak about the whole security of the European continent. And this is why we are all united here with Ukraine on this matter. In order to organize such a trilateral meeting, your idea to ask for a truce or a ceasefire, at least to stop the killings, as we discussed, is a necessity. And we all support this idea. And in order to have such a long-standing peace for Ukraine and for the whole continent, we do need these security guarantees. And the first one is clearly a credible Ukrainian army for the years and decades to come. And the second one is our own commitments, all of us. And we worked very hard during the past few months among the coalition of the willings, with the support of NATO, to build the different pillars of security guarantees and our commitments. And you can be sure that the Europeans are very lucid about the fact that they have their fair share in these security guarantees for Ukraine, but their own security is clearly at stake in this situation. So you can count on us, as we can count on you, in order to deliver this robust peace for both Ukraine and Europe.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. Mr. Prime Minister?
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you for hosting us here. Can I start where Emmanuel started, which is we all want peace. The war in Ukraine has had a huge impact, particularly on the Ukrainians who've borne the brunt of it, but it's also had an impact on Europe and on the United Kingdom. There's not a family or community that hasn't been affected. And when we talk about security, we're talking about the security not just of Ukraine, we're talking about the security of Europe and the United Kingdom as well, which is why this is such an important issue. I think this is such an important meeting. As a group, I think we've had a discussion on the phone a number of times, Mr. President, but be able now to be around the table to take it forward. And I really feel that we can, I think, with the right approach this afternoon, make real progress, particularly on the security guarantees, and your indication of security guarantees of some sort of Article 5 style guarantees fits with what we've been doing with the Coalition of the Willing, which we started some months ago, bringing countries together and showing that we were prepared to step up to the plate when it came to security. With you coming alongside, the US alongside what we've already developed, I think we could take a really important step forward today. A historic step, actually, could come out of this meeting in terms of security for Ukraine and security in Europe. I also feel that we can make real progress towards a just and lasting outcome. Obviously, that has to involve Ukraine, and a trilateral meeting seems the sensible next step. So thank you for being prepared to take that forward, because I think if we can ensure that that is the progress out of this meeting, both security guarantees and some sort of progress on trilateral meeting of some sort to bring some of the difficult issues to a head, then I think today will be seen as a very important day in recent years in relation to a conflict which has gone on for 3 and a bit years, and so far nobody's been able to bring it to this point. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much. And, you know, it's very interesting because this is the first for the White House. You can't say that very often. It's seen a lot over the years, since 1800, 1799, to be almost exact. But this is the first where we've had so many prime ministers, presidents, the heads of European nations. And by the way, Alex, I'd like you to say a couple of words, too. You're a young, powerful man. Before I finish up, I want you to say a couple of words. Go ahead.
I'll take the notion of youth back to my wife and try to convince her. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think in the past 2 weeks, we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have in the past 3.5 years. And I think the fact that we're around this table today is very much symbolic in the sense that it's Team Europe and Team United States helping Ukraine. And the progress that we're looking out of this meeting is about the security guarantees, which are a big part of this. And then, of course, moving towards a process with a trilateral meeting with you and President Putin and President Zelensky. Some of the international media might wonder, why is the President of Finland here? I think the reason is probably that we might come from a small country, but we have a long border with Russia, over 800 miles. And we, of course, have our own historical experience with Russia from World War II, the Winter War and the War of Continuation. And if I look at the silver lining of where we stand right now, we found a solution in 1944, and I'm sure that we'll be able to find a solution in 2025 to end Russia's war of aggression and find and get a lasting and just peace. The situation is very difficult, but that's why we're here.
Thank you, Alex, very much. Good job. So we're going to be meeting for a while, and we're going to discuss some of the issues. And I don't think there's any issue that's overly complex. It's at a point now where people want to do things. I really do believe. I've known him for a long time. I've always had a great relationship with him. I think that President Putin wants to find an answer too. And we'll see. And in a certain period of time, not very far from now, a week or 2 weeks, we're going to know whether or not we're going to solve this, or is this horrible fighting going to continue. We'll do our best to get it ended. And I believe you have two willing parties, and usually that's good news, but two willing parties that want to make a deal. And we'll journey together, and we'll go over, and we'll see if it can be done. And it's possible it might not be able to be done. On the other hand, it's possible it will. And we're going to save thousands and thousands of lives a week. And so it's something we really have to do. And, or at least we have to give it our best. It's all you can do. You can give it your best. But I think we may have a very good outcome. So I want to thank you all, and the media, I want to thank you. We're going to be staying here for a little while. Then we're going to walk over to the Oval Office, and we're going to have another little discussion about similar matters. And then they're going to go home to their great countries and report. And I'm going to remain here and work, and you're going to go and work. We're all going to be working. We may be in a different location, but that's what we know how to do is work. But I want to thank the media. Has been actually very fair, generally speaking, very fair. I think it's important that they're fair because this is a very important subject. We have to get it ended. And so that's all we ask for is fairness with the media. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So with that, let's bring in the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, no stranger to talks with both Zelensky and Putin. He served as CIA director and as the Secretary of State, of course, and as a Fox News contributor. So hard to think of anyone better to assess what's going on in this room and what the prospects of this meeting may be. Good to have you with us, Secretary.
Martha, great to be with you. Thank you.
So tell me what your thoughts are, having watched this very unique format of this meeting. And now, of course, they're going to go behind closed doors and push further on what all of this would look like in terms of a security guarantee.
Martha, you hit on the conversation that they're going to have. It's going to be, what is the shape of this security guarantee? So President Trump has made clear Putin doesn't want NATO as part of Ukraine. Fine, but we're going to give them something that looks and feels, from a security perspective, a lot like that. President Trump's been a little coy about exactly what America's role will be in that. But boy, if you talk to the naysayers over the last 6 months about what President Trump might be willing to do, President Trump is in a very different place. He is, again, putting real pressure on Russia. Think about this meeting alone and the unanimity you saw in that room today. Putin watches this too, and he says this is a united front protecting Europe in a way that it has not done for an awfully long time. And so that is a wonderful thing to convince Putin to change his mind. Having said that, the one thing I think I may disagree with others on, or maybe even President Trump, I have not seen Putin prepared to give up anything material yet. I haven't seen him agree to anything significant that would materially change how Zelensky will have to think about the risk associated with coming to an agreement with Putin. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he'll permit the security guarantees at the level that will be necessary, because it will have to be big and robust and real, not just a paper agreement like the Budapest Memorandum from back in the early mid-90s. This will have to be a serious security commitment. And Putin will have to accept that. I'm not convinced he's there yet. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he said, yep, that'll be fine by me. I also haven't seen any willingness to return those 20,000 children that he's taken. You know, we talk about hostages in Gaza, 20,000 children being held by Russian forces inside of Russia today. So there's still much work to do. The fact that the Europeans all came to Washington today to support President Zelensky and President Trump in this effort, I think is an enormously good thing.
You know, these children, many of them are orphaned by the war. They were taken to Russia. Some of them are not orphans. Some of them have parents who are waiting for them to return. You know, but I want to get back to this security guarantee and what shape it takes. And if you're put yourself in Putin's shoes right now, because you've certainly watched the man at work closely. Does he see any distinction between Ukraine becoming a member of NATO and all of these countries who are unified? We just heard the president of Finland call it Team Europe and Team US, making a security guarantee. Is there any distinction between those two things for Putin?
No, Martha, probably not from his perspective. Two thoughts. One, he often says, or you even see people in the United States say, you know, it's right for Putin not to want NATO on his border. We just saw the Finnish leader. We have NATO on the Russian border today. So that's just that's a ruse that Putin puts forward. It depends what the shape of that security tool is. Is it multinational? Is it real? Are there real weapons, real forces, real intelligence sharing? Is there a shape to this that looks and feels like NATO, or is it just a scattered outpost? Putin would see those two things very, very differently. If it does take a shape of something like you have on the Finnish border or up in the Baltics, or a real NATO force, if it looks and feels like that, I don't think Putin will see much difference.
All right, Secretary Pompeo, thank you very much for weighing in today as we watch this meeting that was hastily put together at the White House, but it was quite impressive in terms of the setup there.
We're going to try and get a three-party meeting, maybe as soon as we can, and I have a feeling you and President Putin are going to work something out. Ultimately, this is a decision that can only be made by President Zelensky and by the people of Ukraine working also together in agreement with President Putin.
All right, with that, we bring in senior correspondent Steve Harrigan, who spent more than a decade reporting in Moscow, covering the war in Ukraine since the beginning, and senior correspondent Ben Hall, who has covered the war extensively and was injured in the Russian missile strike more than 3 years ago. Gentlemen, great to have both of you with us. Steve, let me start with you. Your thoughts on this really extraordinary meeting that's going on right now, as we keep in mind that every war ends with some form of people at a table and lines being redrawn. What do you think of this one?
Absolutely, Martha. And this was extremely impressive and surprising to see a half dozen world leaders be so brief, so economical, and so efficient in front of the cameras was remarkable. One after another, they hit the same points. First, thanks President Trump for breaking the deadlock. And second, Ukraine needs security guarantees. Over and over again, they made that point. Now, the elephant in the room, the one thing no one wanted to mention to spoil all the optimism was, by the way, President Zelensky, Russia holds 20% of your territory, which it has conquered, and you are going to have to give some of that up. It's interesting how that could change how Ukrainians feel about a peace process.
Yeah. Ben, it's so interesting to look at this security guarantee discussion, which would have to include some sort of air cover support over the skies, especially if there are new lines drawn and Russia starts to push those lines. This is something that Ukraine's been asking for since day one, air support. And clearly, the kind of security guarantee they're looking for now, they never got in the years that have dragged on for this war.
Absolutely, and it took a couple of years for President Biden to give the F-16s, which they so demanded and so needed, and how much help that gave. It's interesting because the two big discussions here are land concessions and also the security guarantees. And we've heard a lot about this Article 5-esque idea. What I can say in the last couple of hours, the Russian Foreign Ministry have actually come out and said that they will not accept the deployment of a military contingent of NATO countries in Ukraine, saying such a force would be fraught with unpredictable consequences. And so we're already starting to see the Russian Foreign Ministry perhaps downplaying that idea, saying they don't like it. And look, we've got European leaders, we've got this big event, we had Alaska, but I do think that this is going to come down to President Trump. President Trump is the one person who can go to both sides and say, President Putin, there will be immense sanctions on you if you don't accept this. We will crush your economy. And also to President Zelensky, he will say, if you don't make these concessions, we will think about withdrawing some support for you. President Trump in the US is the only president and person and country that can offer those two. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. President Trump trying to decide that. And one other interesting thing, which we've heard a fair amount over the last few hours, that hasn't been mentioned a lot, is the role of Melania Trump as well. President Zelensky came into the Oval Office with a letter from President Trump to Melania, thanking her for the letter she wrote to President Putin. And Melania, we think, has played a bigger role in the last few months. We've heard President Trump talk a fair bit about how she has talked about the death of the children, what's going on there. And it seems like she's playing a bigger role. And if I can read a couple of lines from her letter to President Putin to you, she says, in today's world, some children are forced to carry a quiet laughter, untouched by the darkness around them, a silent defiance against the forces that can potentially claim their future. Mr. Putin, she said, you can single-handedly restore their melodic laughter. In protecting the innocence of these children, you will do more than serve Russia alone. You serve humanity itself, and you can do it with the stroke of a pen today. It is time. And you do think that, you know, President Trump has been talking more often about the children who have been taken, about the death toll, and I would say he's moved more over to the Ukrainian side. And surrounded by the European leaders, you have to hope that he will be particularly hard to President Putin if he doesn't agree to these security guarantees, which are essential to Ukraine's future.
Yeah, well said. And this image of all of them together is such a powerful sign to Putin about where the weight is at this moment. And I'm glad you pointed out the First Lady's words. She's so unique as a First Lady in the United States because she was born in Eastern Europe. She understands the threat of Putin. And President Trump has said that he would have a conversation with President Putin and he would make promises. And then the next day, the First Lady would say, why is he still dropping bombs on Ukraine? So this is a very interesting move from her. She really only sort of steps in on things that she really cares about as a First Lady. And I think it's very interesting to see her the weight that she carries in this conversation as well. Steve and Ben, thank you both so much. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
The fate of the war in Ukraine and peace on the European continent hanging in the balance today at the White House. President Trump hosted Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky along with a lineup of European leaders just days after his pivotal sit-down with Vladimir Putin. No big Oval Office blow-ups like last time. It was very calm, and they made inroads on a possible trilateral summit deal between Russia, Ukraine, and the U.S.
First of all, thank you for invitation, and thank you very much for your efforts, personal efforts to stop killings and stop this war. Thank you.
This isn't my war. This is Joe Biden's war. He's the one that had a lot to do with this happening.
First of all, President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, you look good.
I said the same thing.
Yeah, looks
Isn't
good
that
on
nice?
you.
That's the one that attacked you last time. See, now he's in.
I remember that.
No matter what I do, no matter what, and you know, this is not anything to do with you. It's probably to your advantage in a certain way. But no matter what I do, no matter what deal I make, from my standpoint, you'll come out good. Maybe President Putin will come out good. But they'll say, Trump was absolutely horrible. I used to get great publicity. Now I get the worst publicity anyone's ever gotten in office. And we've made more progress in settling this war in the last 2 months than they made in 4 years. This should have been settled a long time ago, but it should have never happened.
Later on, President Trump holding a family photo with European and NATO leaders, and then a roundtable where there was plenty on the agenda, everything from possible land swaps to Russia agreeing to accept security guarantees for Ukraine.
I believe that in a very significant step, President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine, and this is one of the key points that we need to consider, and we're going to be considering that at the table.
Oh, hi, Jesse. Welcome back.
It's good to be back around the table.
So one thing that is really interesting is that under President Biden, remember the line was over and over again, as long as it takes. But if you think about it, initially, they didn't give them the weapons they needed to win. They just slow walked that and dribbled it out over time. And now no one is arguing for the continuation of the war, not even Putin or Zelensky.
And that's a good thing. And it's a good thing that Zelensky wore a suit or a semi-suit. People say that's trivial, Jesse. Why do you care what he wears? I care because it's a sign of respect. And the American people agree with me. And it's also a sign that he stepped up his suit game of warming relations between Trump and Zelensky. So remember, a couple months ago, they had the big, nasty blow-up. And what did we say at the time? You know, deals blow up and they get put back together. Guys fight and then they patch it up. Not like women.
They patch it up at the Vatican.
Women hold grudges, Dana. Could you imagine Kamala Harris doing this type of diplomacy, flying to Alaska, bringing all these world leaders to D.C.? She could never have pulled it off. Not because she's a woman, Dana, because she's Kamala Harris.
She'd be in duty-free most of the time.
The war has lasted 3 years. Every war over the last 100 years has been longer. Both world wars, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. If he can patch this up this quickly, it would be an historic success. And how did he do it? I believe it was these secondary sanctions on Russian energy exports, because that was about 3 weeks after he did that. They had that phone call, and then they had this meeting. And also, these oligarchs want their yachts back. I always like to ask, when Jessica's here, not you, Harold, what is the Democrat plan? Because right now they're saying, armchair quarterbacking, you can't reward Putin for his naked aggression. So he can't keep the land he won on the battlefield. Okay, how are you going to get Vladimir Putin to relinquish the land he won in battle? The United States won lands in battle. We didn't just give it back. No country gives back land they win in battle. That's what this is all about. You have to accept reality, and that's what these Democrats aren't doing. Borders change all the time. You can't go back to the borders that Ukraine had. Think about Germany. It used to be the Prussian Empire. Then it was the German Empire. It expanded, it contracted in the world wars, and then they divided it in two. And now it's reunited. And they can't do this to Ukraine? Come on, that's ridiculous. Trump's just stopping the bleeding. Bill Clinton was the one that made Ukraine give away its nukes. Then he invaded Crimea under Obama's watch, and when Joe said don't, Vlad went in strong. Trump is just there to patch things up, and he's doing it not by being bullied like the media says he's being bullied. Putin's bullied all these other Democrats in office. This guy threatened to nuke Moscow. Think about it. He was going to bomb the bejesus out of their capital if Vlad tried this on the last watch. He saw this coming, too. Remember Nord Stream? He said, no, no, no. He said, beef up your military in NATO, and he got it done. And now, if you can end this war now, and you can guarantee European soldiers to go onto the front lines if Vlad gets this dumb idea back in his head, and we get the minerals, and we get the drone technology out of the Ukrainian military, pretty good win.
Jesse, you're kind of like a woman today because
I talk too much?
no, well, I remember when Peter he would be gone for like 12 hours when we first met, and he would go to work and then he'd come back, and I would talk straight for an hour and a half because I had no one else to talk to. And you've been gone for a week, and we appreciate your contribution, and that was beautiful.
Thank you, Dana, for that positive encouragement.
Harold, one of the things that I think that this showed as well is just the power and exceptional nature of America, because President Trump had the power to convene. I mean, it takes weeks just to schedule to see your dentist, and everybody dropped everything in order to be here at the White House today.
Well, I'm glad Jesse's back. It was great to see really the last 72 to 96 hours. I give the president a lot of credit. I thought it took a lot of courage and a lot of choreography and a lot of restraint to have Putin in Alaska. And for those that know history, you know that the Russians had to sell us Alaska. And it's become such an important part of not only our military, but our economic growth over the many, many years as well. And for Putin to have to negotiate there, there's so much that was involved. Then you think, to your point, Dana, here we are just a few days later, 48, 72 hours later, and you have basically the entire European, the structure, the most important and longest serving allies we have there, as well as the heads of the EU and the head of NATO. What I found interesting were a couple of things, my takeaways. One, salute to Steve Ducey, young Ducey. Peter Ducey, he asked a great question to open up the meeting between President Trump and Mr. Zelensky. He asked a very direct question to both of them, and I thought it took courage and it was the right question. Two, we are now seeing, Jesse, what some of the contours of the deal could be. To hear and watch Mr. Zelensky learn from his February meeting, to be positive and to lay out what it is that he wants. He talked about security guarantees and prisoner swaps. I presume that means also the children that the First Lady, I thought, so eloquently and powerfully has asked about. And three, Jesse, I differ with you just slightly, but the Democrats have nothing to do with this. There are Republicans and Democrats who were concerned about the meeting with Putin. And there were even some Republicans who were mildly critical of giving Mr. Putin the stage there in Alaska. I was not. And there were some Democrats that were as well. I think when I think about the lines, and I don't know if you meant it this way, so I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt here, but when you think about, we won the Cold War. We spent a lot of money and time and effort to do that. And as a result, lines were drawn and perks were given. Mr. Putin, throughout his time in public life, has made clear that he wants to reconstitute the geographic footprint, the power print of what the USSR was. You don't want that. He wants that. And I think when we talk too casually about redrawing lines, we run the risk of saying to countries like Latvia and Estonia and Lithuania, don't worry. If he gets in there and he takes over parts of your country, we'll only come in and help you establish peace if you give pieces of it up. I'm not saying that's where President Trump is. I'm not convinced that President Trump is ready to give any more than Crimea. That's the one thing he did say in social media. I am not convinced that he's willing to give up 1/3 of Ukraine. Now, they have 20% they're in occupation of. Putin wants 10% more. Can you imagine if someone told America, we want 30% of your country and Miami?
Obviously, that's just a deal he's trying to cut.
Jesse,
no one's going to give up land they don't have.
Right, but I'm only saying I'm not saying you're saying this. My only point is I give President Trump tremendous credit for where we are, and if he is able again to engineer this deal, we've been saying for weeks on this show, I would be the first. I would hope you would invite me down to the White House when the president is awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, because he would absolutely deserve it.
Greg, a lot of people will complain about Trump's how, not necessarily the why. So everyone now, however, seems to be okay with the how, because he's also talking about security guarantees, and the Europeans are like, okay, and we're waiting to just get confirmation on this. You know, he wanted to call Putin right there with everybody and just say, do we have a deal?
Right. Before I compliment the president, I am confused about security guarantees without being in NATO. That's kind of like a foreign policy version of friends with benefits. Yep. You know, there's no ring on the finger, no formal commitments, but whenever you want like a casual get together, we'll be there. I don't see how that works. I mean, I guess you could do it, but it kind of negates the utility of NATO, right? I mean, it's like, why get married if you can milk the cow for free. That's what my mom used to say. And I said, Mom, I'm not into that sort of thing. But anyway, maybe you don't need, I mean, it's like almost like, well, maybe you don't need NATO if you get the same perks without being in NATO. But the spectacle of this is undeniable. It feels like optimism. It looks like progress because that's Trump's mindset. It's the cliched power of positive thinking. It actually works. Fact is, if you want war, you know, there'll be plenty of people who will accommodate. They make a lot of money off it, but he doesn't want it. And you ask about, you know, what's behind him. He is the most anti-war president ever. And you can question why. Who cares? My theory is he can't compute waste, whether it's blood, money, or time. He just doesn't, he can't stand it. You know, how many peace deals has he brokered so far? You had Cambodia and Thailand. You had Rwanda and the Republic of Azerbaijan and Armenia. I don't need to pronounce them. India and Pakistan, and I think there was Egypt and Ethiopia. There's more than a few. Life is unpredictable. I mean, the most bellicose personality we have ever seen on the political stage is also the most effective peacemaker we've seen. I do love how the media portrays him as weak, you know, as every world leader comes to meet with him. If Obama had done this, they would give him another Nobel, a Grammy, an Oscar, a Tony, and the Stanley Cup. And then you have these other guys that, oh, how dare, there must be an alternative to this. You know, they don't want communication with Putin. But these are the people that always say, let's have a conversation. But they never really actually want one at all. So I think this is another kind of great thing that is probably going to turn out to be great, and a lot of people are going to hate that it's great.
Don't forget, they would have given Obama the Heisman.
Yes, they would have.
As well, I think.
And he throws like a girl.
Baseball trophy. Yikes! Kidding. Katie, let me give you the last word. We covered a lot.
Well, there were no daddy references today, so the head of NATO failed to bring that back to the table. Remember, he called him daddy at the NATO summit, and then addressed it last time he was in the Oval Office. But I just can't. I mean, this is a president who went to Alaska on Friday, flew B-2 bombers over the head of Vladimir Putin, had a summit, flew back, got home at 4 a.m, then went golfing both Saturday and Sunday, gets this meeting together today, and has every single leader there say, we've done more in the last 2 weeks than we've done over the last 3.5 years. So that not only emphasizes President Trump's leadership on the global stage to get results, but it also shows just how absent Joe Biden was for the last 3.5 years and how dangerous it was for the United States on the global stage to be completely MIA from actually trying to manage and prevent this war from starting in the first place. I also found that Trump's humility today was very interesting. He is a deal maker. He's always very confident he can get something done. I think he still is confident, but he kept saying, look, we're going to do our best to get something done, but maybe we won't get a deal. So we're still watching to see what the details are.
I thought, too, like he was recognizing and being mindful that everybody there has their own constituencies. Right. Including Zelensky, he himself does, and then everybody else, including Macron. I hope they gave him the business about recognizing Palestine as a state, too.
Yeah, me too.
In the off the record part. So we also have this, I mentioned it a little bit. Fox News confirmed that President Trump's multilateral meeting with European leaders and President Zelensky has ended. So we're keeping an eye on that.
First up, senior White House correspondent Peter Doocy live from the North Lawn. Good evening, Peter.
Good evening, Brett. Yes, this meeting has run a lot longer than we thought it was going to, which usually means either something good is happening behind closed doors or something not so good is happening behind closed doors. What we know before they all went into the private setting is that all of the Europeans and President Trump have agreed on one big thing, and that is offering their country's troops as NATO-like peacekeepers in Ukraine if the Russians agree to end the war. That is something that President Trump says he thinks could happen after a Trump, Putin, Zelensky trilateral meeting at some point within the next week or two.
We want to stop the killing, get this settled.
And Zelensky is not debating President Trump in public, despite last night's proclamation that for Ukraine there will be no getting back Obama-given Crimea and no going into NATO by Ukraine.
I think that we had very good conversation with President Trump.
Very good.
And it really was the best one.
And that's why there appears to be momentum towards peace.
I think in the past 2 weeks we've probably had more progress in ending this war than we have in the past 3.5 years.
Western Europe's power players rushed to the White House at the president's last-minute invitation.
We all want peace.
Everybody around this table is in favor of peace.
Now we are here to work together with you on a just and lasting peace for Ukraine.
But nothing final until Russia agrees.
If we can have a good meeting, I'll set up a meeting with President Putin. And if you'd like, I'll go to that meeting.
President Trump is not ruling out stationing a rotating force of American troops in Ukraine after Friday's private chat with Putin.
President Putin agreed that Russia would accept security guarantees for Ukraine.
But the president knows a peace agreement might work out, and it might not.
Is this the end of the road for American support for Ukraine? Is today's meeting deal or no deal?
I can never say that. It's never the end of the road. People are being killed, and we want to stop that. So I would not say it's the end of the road. No, I think we have a good chance of doing it.
The last time Zelensky was here in the Oval Office, President Trump told him during a heated argument that Zelensky didn't have the cards to negotiate. Today, when we asked President Trump if he thinks Russia or Ukraine has better cards, he didn't want to say. He says he just wants the killing to stop. Brett.
And Peter, just to be clear, have you seen any leaders leave the White House?
No, Brett, and when I look out at Pennsylvania Avenue, which is just out of the frame, there are still a ton of motorcade vehicles, so armored SUVs, marked police, and motorcycles that would normally accompany a visiting heads of state. Typically, just minutes after we expect one of these meetings to end, you hear the motorcycle engines start to rev up, you see sirens start to clear people out. We have not had that. It has been all quiet on Pennsylvania Avenue. And so as we understand it, at least some of the major players, these visiting Western European leaders, are still in the West Wing, or at least somewhere in the House, looking for a way out.
Peter Ducey live in the North Lawn. Peter, thanks. Chief political analyst Britt Hume, there he is, Fox News contributor Guy Benson, and Mark Thiessen, also a Fox News contributor. Britt, we've been watching all day. Again, we're waiting for Volodymyr Zelensky to come here. It may or may not happen. We'll see. We're ready to go. And it seems like this is lasting a long time, which, to Peter's point, could be a good thing or a bad thing. What we heard today publicly sounded like it was heading in the right direction.
Well, it certainly was an impressive display, Brett, perhaps even a historic display of U.S.-European unity, at least in the modern age, at least in these recent years, when there's been so much tension between President Trump in particular and European leaders. Today, they're all united, sitting around the table, praising him and talking about their optimism for peace. And all of that is a good thing, no doubt. But we also had a response from Russia today to the idea of some kind of a NATO-like peacekeeping force with European nations in it in Ukraine, and they say they explicitly reject that and always have, and they always. So they would have to give some real ground there in order to change Russia's mind about that. And I think it suggests that the path toward a final deal here may be some considerable ways off, much as the president, who always likes to have things done quickly, as we hear him say, would like this to happen on a fast track.
We're just getting word from the wires, and I think this is coming from Truth Social, that the president says he had a very good meeting, that they've begun arrangements for a meeting at a location to be determined between President Putin and President Zelensky. After that meeting takes place, this is a very good early step for a war that's been going on for almost 4 years. There was a call, Mark, between President Trump and President Putin during this meeting, at which time he broke away from the European leaders and President Zelensky and had a call with President Putin directly. And again, the leaders are still there at the White House. So your thoughts about piecing all this together early?
Well, the fact that they're there and they're talking and it's going so, it's probably a sign that it's going very, very well. I know the Ukrainians were very pleased with the bilateral meeting once the press left the room. Here's the situation. President Trump has done something very clever with this Article 5 guarantee, because Putin's red line has been no NATO membership for Ukraine. So he puts out on Truth Social the other night, no NATO membership for Ukraine, echoing Putin's line. But then he offers them NATO-like Article 5 guarantee. So he's giving Putin what he wants. Ukraine is not going to be in NATO, but he's giving Ukraine what it needs, which is the kind of guarantee that the war will not start again. And so this puts Putin in a very tough situation, because if all these leaders are agreed, President Trump is agreed, they're making concessions to Russia, and Putin says no. First, if he says yes, then Ukraine survives as a sovereign nation with Article 5 good security guarantees. And if he says no, then he's the one to blame for the peace process breaking down, and he's going to bear the brunt of the cost in terms of economic sanctions, secondary tariffs, and escalated arms for the Ukrainians. So either way, Ukraine comes out of this pretty well.
Okay, Guy, this is from a Truth Social post moments ago, getting the full thing now. I had a very good meeting with distinguished guests. He goes on to list all the leaders there in the White House, which ended in a further meeting at the Oval Office. During the meeting, we discussed security guarantees for Ukraine, which guarantees would be provided by the various European countries with a coordination with the United States of America. Everyone is very happy about the possibility of peace for Russia-Ukraine. At the conclusion of the meetings, I called President Putin and began the arrangements for a meeting at a location to be determined between President Putin and President Zelensky. After that meeting takes place, we will have a trilat, which would be the two presidents plus myself. Again, this is a very good early step for the war that has been going on for almost 4 years. Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff are coordinating with Russia and Ukraine. Thank you for your attention to the matter, as he often does on the dismount there, Guy. Thoughts?
Well, I think an operative word there is early step. That's a bit of tempering of expectations, at least in terms of a timeline from President Trump. I'm struck, and how can you not be, by how much more positive the vibes, for lack of a better word, are coming out of this meeting compared to what we saw this winter with the meltdown, the debacle in the Oval Office with Trump, Vance, and Zelensky. This is much chummier, much closer. Britt mentioned the word unity, this show of unity between the U.S., Europe, and Ukraine specifically. That isn't just optics. I was talking to Secretary Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of State under the first Trump administration, on the radio today, and he said it's actually a very important thing to come out with that sort of forceful show, because Putin and the Kremlin have spent years now trying to drive a wedge between the U.S. and Europe, between Europe and Ukraine, and to see all of these leaders come together, show up, and be singing, at least for now, from the same hymnal in a way that's very clear, is a way of putting pressure on Putin and Russia and showing that some of their machinations to try to sow divisions to this point now are failing.
Yeah, I think we have some of the afternoon session where the European leaders were chatting, as well as the president, around the table, and some positive things about security guarantees and the way forward. Take a listen. I'm sorry, we don't have that. Britt, to Guy's point, it is a different feel, a different sense of where things stand. After Alaska, we didn't know exactly what President Trump got out of it specifically as far as what Vladimir Putin agreed to. But it seems security guarantees are a big part of this.
Well, he may in some principle, Putin, have agreed to security guarantees. But the word coming out of the Russian Foreign Ministry this afternoon, today, was that the idea of a NATO-like force on Ukrainian soil composed of European and perhaps even American forces is a non-starter as far as they're concerned. Now, they may come off that position. It hasn't come from Putin himself. It remains to be seen. I might add a note to what the guy was saying, Brett, about what we saw today and what it represented. New nations in NATO that weren't in it before, Finland being the most conspicuous example. Putin started out this thinking in a matter of days he was going to have all of Ukraine and control of the capital and all of the country. So it's going on now for a couple of years, and he is moving. Yes, he's still moving, but he's moving by the inch at staggering cost. And now with the prospect, if the president were to follow through on his threats, of further damage to an economy, which we had been given to believe, Brett, not too many weeks ago, had turned into kind of an absolute juggernaut of arms production and so forth, and was doing just fine. Now we hear otherwise. The Russian economy is vulnerable. So the situation Mr. Putin is in is not an enviable one. Now, he plays his cards very close to the vest, and he talks very tough, but one wonders how long he can keep that up in light of what he has suffered.
Mark, a final word as we're kind of getting more and more information on this. The bottom line is that President Trump wants to bring this to an end. He's clearly bending over backwards on all sides to get these leaders together. And it seems like we're 2 steps away from a trilateral meeting between the 3 leaders.
Yeah, so the most important thing President Trump said publicly, at least today, was that he doesn't want this to be a deal for 2 years. He wants this to be a permanent end to the war. And so he understands that you need to have real security guarantees in order to make that happen. And as usually, Britt Hume is right. I mean, if you think about this, at the start of the war, Putin controlled 7% of Ukraine. He now controls 19% of Ukraine. So that means in 3 years, he has gained 12% of the country at a cost of 1 million casualties and $500 billion of spending. And that spending has unleashed double-digit inflation, massive loss of economic power. All that's keeping him afloat is his energy, and Trump has that in his crosshairs. So he's the weak one in this situation. They're coming out of this meeting very strong.
Okay, stand by if you would. We'll come back to you in a little bit later, hopefully with President Zelensky. Here are some other headlines tonight.
Here with us exclusively is NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, who's just fresh off these meetings. It was a long day. Mr. Secretary General, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me on the program. It's good to see you.
Absolutely. And President Trump, I know, spoke with Vladimir Putin in the Oval Office, and then he brought you all in and other European leaders in. What can you tell us, and what were you told about this call?
Well, let me first say that this was a very successful day. And I agree with you that President Trump is a pragmatic peacemaker, as you, I think, said. What he did this year, breaking the deadlock, starting the conversation with Putin, but also putting pressure. We have had the NATO summit, the 5%, which was a big foreign policy success of President Trump. And then he decided to, again, have lethal weapons go into Ukraine, paid for by the Europeans. And he put secondary sanctions, tariffs on India. So he's putting pressure, but he is also looking for ways to solve this, to bring this war to an end. So today was very successful. We discussed the security guarantees. We will work on those over the coming days and then have another meeting virtually with this group of leaders and the president. And then we will work towards this trilateral. And he was able, in a conversation with President Putin, to have Putin to agree to first a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. So they will now discuss where that meeting will take place in the run-up to the trilateral. So all in all, a very successful day.
Now, Mr. Secretary General, we've heard repeatedly that Vladimir Putin is very wary of any type of security agreement because that is essentially, to many, tantamount to NATO membership for Ukraine. And we know what Russia thinks of that, given, obviously, the border and the history there. What can you tell us specifically about what might be agreed to regarding that security issue, which is paramount?
Yeah, let me be very specific. So over the last couple of months, under the leadership of Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, and Emmanuel Macron, the French President, a group of now 30 countries, including Japan and Australia, are working on this concept of security guarantees. Of course, post a long-term ceasefire, or more preferable, a full peace deal. What the US has now said, that the United States wants to get involved in this. What that exactly will mean, the US involvement, will be discussed over the coming days. Anyway, we have to discuss more details of the security guarantees. But clearly, for Ukraine to consider what to do next when it comes to territory, it is important to also know what the situation will be with the security guarantees to prevent Vladimir Putin from ever trying again to invade parts of Ukraine.
Was there any absolute no-go for certain territory that Ukraine will just simply not give up at this point?
We have not discussed that today because everybody is clear, including the president, that when it comes to territory, it is the Ukrainian president who has discussed this in the trilateral, and then probably more conversations after that with the Russian leadership, with Vladimir Putin of Russia. But today it was clear that for the Ukrainians to be willing to discuss territory and as part of an overall solution to this terrible war and to stop the killing, first we need to have full clarity collectively US, the Europeans and the others in this coalition of the willing on what security guarantees will mean. And again, it is really a breakthrough that the US will get involved. And then again, the level of involvement will now be discussed.
So NATO membership for Ukraine is completely off the table, correct?
The situation is this, that the US and some other countries have said that they are against NATO membership for Ukraine. The official NATO position since the summit in 2024 is that there is an irreversible path for Ukraine into NATO. But what we are discussing here is not NATO membership. What we are discussing here is Article 5 type of security guarantees for Ukraine, and what they exactly will entail will now be more specifically discussed.
Was there any discussion, sir, of troops on the ground, meaning European or U.S. troops? Because Americans hear that. They're like, wait a second. We've spent close to, what, $200 billion in Ukraine, and we understand we want Ukraine to be successful. But that's a lot of money. We've carried a lot of the burden. Europe has an economy of about $20 trillion annually. Britain has an economy, what, $2-3 trillion annually. It's pretty much comparable to ours, a little bit less, but not much. Troops on the ground, is that a possibility?
We have not discussed that at all today. So that will be part of the discussions which will now start. We will try to bring them to a next stage of understanding over the coming days and weeks, of course. I'm not sure that we can solve all the details. But what we all agree on is that if this war comes to an end, we cannot have a repeat of the Minsk peace agreement of 2014, which was then basically challenged by the Russians in the months and years after. So it has to be definitive that Russia will never, ever, ever again try to catch a square mile of territory of Ukraine post a peace deal. And again, all the details now have to be hammered out. And when it comes to the money, you're right that the US has spent a lot of money on Ukraine. The good news is that President Trump has now negotiated through me with the European partners in NATO, that NATO partners in Europe are paying for the delivery of American weapons. So this is good news for the American middle class, but also good news for Ukraine, because it means that the flow of lethal weapons from the US is, as we speak, continuing into Ukraine.
I know there's been some pressure, sir, put on India for its continuing to purchase oil and other products from Russia. But meanwhile, we have China's great might, and that's been hovering in the background. We talked a little bit about that in the angle, the closeness of Xi and Putin developing over the last 3-4 years. Has that been a point of discussion among European leaders, especially given China's economic might that's being exercised within Europe's boundaries?
Well, Europe's absolutely right, of course, that China is still supporting the war effort by sanction circumvention, by delivering dual-use goods, but of course, as you say, also by buying a lot of goods out of Russia and therefore also directly and indirectly supporting the war effort. The great thing the President decided in July, when I was visiting here mid-July, and we agreed on the flow of lethal weapons into Ukraine paid for by the Europeans, was that he also said that in 50 days he would put secondary sanctions on countries who are still trading with Russia. And a couple of weeks ago, I think it was now 10 days ago, he decided, when it came to India, to move to the next step on this. And this is a momentous decision. And it means that Delhi will probably now be on the phone many times already and will continue to do that with Moscow, saying, well, we might still support
what about China?
Well, and China, of course, might be the next one. But I think what the president did now is already very important. That on India he did, and we'll see what happens next. But of course, when there is now talk of a full peace deal, I can imagine that we first want to give that a chance before we move to more tariffs. But if Russia is not playing ball, if Russia, for example, would not agree to a trilateral, I could imagine that that the United States plus Europe will do more when it comes to tariffs and sanctions.
Mr. Secretary General, I want you to take us, if you would, our viewers across the country, into the room with Donald Trump when the cameras were pulled back and it was just all of you. What was he like? What is his conversational tone like with you? Because for years, we've heard about, oh, he wants to ruin NATO. He wants to break up NATO. He's a great disruptor. He doesn't know what he's doing. Tell us what he's like behind closed doors.
Well, he was amazing, and he is amazing. And let me tell you this, that his criticism of NATO was right. What he was saying is that the US is spending so much more on its defense and therefore spending on the collective defense of NATO territory than the Europeans. And the great thing is, and I think this is, and I hope the Americans see this, probably one of his biggest foreign policy successes of his president, of Trump 47, is that during the NATO summit, we committed collectively to this 5% spending, including 3.5% on the core defense spending. That's the same the US is spending. So now we are equalizing what the US is spending, what the Europeans are spending. And he has therefore taken a different view. He always said that he supported NATO, but he also expected the Europeans to pay up, to spend more. He has been successful in doing this. So today, the conversation was a conversation among friends, among close allies who respect each other, who like each other, who know each other very well, discussing how we can bring this terrible war to an end. And this is a goal we all have in common. And without President Trump, this deadlock with Putin would not have been broken. He was the only one who could do that, starting in February.
Well, just very briefly, compare this team of Marco Rubio and Steve Witkoff, obviously the president, all the other people, and Biden's team. What were the different approaches like?
I cannot answer that question because I'm not involved in American politics, and of course we have to work with whoever you guys here make the president. Let me only say this, that I became close friends with President Trump when he was president between 2016 and 2020. I was Prime Minister of the Netherlands. I've been 14 years in that role. I've worked with many presidents in the United States. And those 4 years I found extremely pleasant to work with him. And I was, of course, very happy to see that he was coming back, not having a view on the outcome of the elections, because we are not involved here. But he is a close friend, and we work very well together. And I look very much forward to the next 3.5 years.
Mr. Secretary General, I know it's been a long day for you. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and come back soon.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.